Welcome back to the Marketing Rules podcast, and it's my pleasure to welcome Chantal from Silverstone Park. Chantal, it's great to have you here.
Thank you, James. Good to be here.
You're one of the kind of the special guests because we're doing this all on video. We tend to do this all audio.
Yeah.
So you're kind of one of the kind of our test subjects, basically.
No pressure. I'm glad I've done my hair today then, yeah.
We always get that question though, right? Yeah.
Exactly that, yeah.
Chantal, it'd be really good if, just to kind of set the scene for today, if you could just tell us a little bit about your kind of background and what you do at Silverstone Park.
Thank you, yeah. So as you said, I'm from Silverstone Park. I'm marketing manager here. So started kind of middle of last year. Been working in marketing industry for, almost 20 years now. So I've been around the block a few times, I've got to say. But yeah, I kind of joined the park coming over from another site owned by the same people, and that was Centre M.K. Milton Keynes shopping centre. Yep. Top 10 shopping centre, grade 2 listed, not a lot of people know that. And prior to that, a lot of time in retail. So I was at Selfridges on Bond Street. Way back in the day, I was actually at Daily Mail Group, Evening Standard Metro, selling advertising space, so that was fun.
And is that always been your background? Because I'm also interested about kind of marketeers. Being a marketeer myself, I have no formal training, all right? I kind of fell into this through kind of web design and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Are you kind of formally trained? Have you kind of gone through that process?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think you're right. I think nowadays I think a lot of marketeers kind of get formally qualified, but probably our generation it was a bit looser. I actually left school at 17 with just AS levels and kind of fell into sales advertising, you know, for newspapers and things like that. And I really got passionate about advertising. And an opportunity came up at Selfridges. They were looking for an advertising coordinator, and I was actually meant to be promoting that role. And I kind of went for it, had no experience whatsoever, and I just kind of blagged it. And it soon became quite clear that actually I really needed to get a degree to kind of, not for the knowledge side of things actually, but just to have a little bit of kudos in that world. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I did. I went and did a part-time degree at University of Arts in London just to get kind of my foot in the door a little bit more, and then kind of went from there. But I think nowadays people have to, you know, they choose the form of marketing they want to get into a lot more, whereas back then it was like you try a little bit of that, you try a little bit of that, and you see what works. So I've done a bit of PR, branding, everything.
Yeah. Well, these days you're right though. Marketing's such a broad church, and there's so many little niches within it, from content, advertising, online, digital, offline, events, branding, graphic design. There's all these kinds of disciplines now that just weren't there probably 30 years ago.
Exactly.
You know? And I guess the thing is, you know, being a marketing manager, you know, you've got to have a bit of a knowledge of all of that, right? It kind of, you've got to have your fingers in all of these kind of different aspects, and it's difficult to become, you know, but is there still something that you are kind of more interested and more passionate about when it comes to kind of marketing? Do you prefer, do you love the copywriting, or do you love that kind of thing? Because that's usually you find someone still likes the
you normally
little bit
find your niche, don't you? Exactly. I think being on the retail side for so long, I loved doing the kind of TV adverts. Those kind of big campaign pieces were brilliant. But I think coming over to Silverstone Park, what's really interesting is it's a whole different world, and we'll probably get onto it, is because it's innovators, everybody's got an interesting story. Yeah. So in retail, you're always having to engineer the next campaign. You know, a t-shirt's a t-shirt, and you're having to find a new way to market it each season. But with what the guys are doing here, there's, you know, it writes the story itself. Yeah. Copywriting I absolutely love, but you know, it's interesting actually, I was writing a brief yesterday, and I normally spend so long kind of crafting the copy and understanding what I want to write, and I was like, right, let's give the chat
ChatGPT.
Go.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because and this isn't, you know, we're here to talk about Silverstone Park and everything that goes on around the park. But, you know, talking about marketing, I literally, as soon as you said about copywriting, so surely there's an AI element in all of this, right?
100%.
We talk about this all the time on the podcast, right?
Yeah. It is really interesting, and I'm probably a bit kind of late to the party, but I've just started to kind of use it in my briefing tools. And what I've realised is that you still need to have that element of critical thinking, don't you? You still need to know what looks good and what doesn't, and how to refine it. It is super useful, especially when, like yesterday, I was doing it was a document for an 8-page brief. You've got so many different elements, you know, different companies that we're talking about. There's a lot of information, and it's like, how do I consolidate that? Yeah. So it really helps. But there was a big element of like refinement. So yeah, we still need that.
So most people, when they think of Silverstone, they're going to think of the racetrack and they'll think of Formula One.
Yeah.
But that's one weekend, right, basically. Yeah. And actually that doesn't have a huge amount to do necessarily with what also is going on in the park, right? So maybe for the viewers, it'd be great if you can kind of give us a whistle-stop tour of what actually goes on at Silverstone Park.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you say, Silverstone itself obviously got the circuit there, the heritage, and off the back of that, some clever developers thought that this is a great opportunity to build a business park. So about 10 years ago, they started off with a couple of businesses locally in the automotive kind of sector, and it's grown rapidly. We've got 90 global businesses here, but actually it's really diverse. When I first came here, I thought it's just going to be motorsport, and there is a lot of that, but actually you've got people in defence, agri-tech, like research and development. It's really broad. It's like anything to do with innovation. And yeah, we've got, F1 weekend for the people that work here is brilliant to be kind of part of that, that side of things. But yeah, as you say, it's all the technologies behind it. That's the kind of front end of it, isn't it? It's all the technologies that go behind it.
Yeah. So a lot of the business here are kind of in that advanced engineering space or kind of advanced technology space.
Correct, yeah.
Some of them feed into Formula One, into motorsport, as you said, but some of them don't. So really what I guess the park is about is trying to build that community of innovators. So how do you go about that? How have you kind of fostered that and nurtured that here?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one because you've got different elements. Some people will be here just because of the Silverstone name, but more so that we're finding that we've created a cluster here, and actually there's a cluster called the Silverstone Technology Cluster, which Silverstone Park are founding members of. And I hadn't come across clusters before. I didn't really understand what they were, but they are so crucial in kind of driving innovation forward. So as part of STC, we're also part of the super cluster, the Oxford-Cambridge super cluster, and it just helps to unlock investment. It creates a kind of competitiveness between occupiers, which helps in a way because it makes everything go a little bit quicker. There's a need to get things across the line a little bit quicker, and there's just an element of being able to kind of network and just having that joint partnership. It really helps.
And is there a lot of that goes on within the park? Because as you said, some of them are going to be competitors with each other. Some of them are in completely disparate kind of areas of advanced engineering and technology. You can't just kind of lump it all into one. Sure. We've spoken to the guys over at NICAB, and there's they do cables, right? And then you've kind of got the guys over at Silverstone Composites are doing something else.
Yes.
So how do you kind of get them all to talk to each other apart from running an event or something like that?
I think it's tricky. Is the answer. I think getting people out of their units, out of their sheds to talk, it can be difficult. But I think a lot of the networking events, people start to have conversations, and particularly where they're around areas where there's common issues. So sometimes you'll find that they're all really good on the innovation side, the entrepreneurial side, but they might be not so good at marketing or HR or understanding cybersecurity. So we've started to put on little workshops where people can come along, and often off the back of that, when someone's at the coffee machine, that'll be when a conversation comes out about something different. And actually, although you have some businesses here who are in direct competition, Formula One teams, etc., a lot of the businesses, there's cross-pollination between what they do. One will be developing something and they just I need that little element, and they can, when they understand who else is here, they can have those conversations and draw their expertise, and that's where it works really well. So I think part of my job here is to be a bit of a matchmaker and kind of set up those conversations between people.
Yeah, because that was my next question around kind of, your role within this as the marketing manager for the park. Is it where you're trying to bring in new businesses and market the park as a place to be because you're going to be able to kind of take advantage of all that innovation that goes on around you? Is it working with the people in the park already to help them understand what they should be doing, how they could kind of do whatever they need to do better? Is it all them? Is it something else? How does it work?
Yeah, it's. I think I never had a JD when I turned up here, and they said, oh, you know about destinations, you've worked for a shopping centre, you've got 210 retailers there. It's kind of a bit of a blank sheet. And I was like, right, okay, where do you even start? And I think for the last 6 months, I've been doing exactly that, is looking at, so what does this role need to do? What do we actually need to deliver? And it's a little bit of everything that you mentioned, to be honest. I think there's certainly the branding piece around the park as a whole and putting it on the map. It's just as important to do that matchmaking piece between occupiers, not just to retain them, but to develop their businesses. And then, when you think of other clusters like Silicon Valley, etc., it's everything. It's the sum of the parts, isn't it? If it was just Apple there by itself, it wouldn't have been such a massive thing. Yeah. So, we have to kind of have that lens on things as well and bring out some of those stories.
And do you have much competition with other similar kind of parks? Because we're in this kind of motorsport valley, right? And I can think of another few places in and around here, not too far, maybe near a very big retail village,
yes,
right? That also is trying to do something kind of very similar. And there's other ones, right, in Oxford and Cambridge. And so is there a certain amount of kind of competition where there's big brands and innovators want to be part of this and trying to draw them in as well? Is that kind of part of the role?
I think, potentially, although we actually work quite closely with a lot of the business parks, and there's actually a conference for like UK science parks that we go to, and they have like a lovely award ceremony, and you can take a lot of learnings from other people. Everyone's got their own kind of USP, and we've got Silverstone, which is just you can't beat that. And I think what we're doing here is quite unique, and it's got a lot of room for development as well. And I think that's probably the thing that sets us apart, is a lot of the business parks that are more established, they might not have the land, etc. We're really good for scaling up. We've got a company here, Diva, who started off with a 10,000 unit, and she's gone up to 200,000 square feet. So you wouldn't be able to get that at certain other parks. They just haven't got the land space. So we offer something slightly different. Obviously, if you're like in certain sectors, then there might be other parks that are better for you. But we tend to find that the people that come here, they're coming here for those reasons. So that kind of helps.
And obviously, a lot of this podcast, we talk around kind of talent and talent attraction and things like that. And I guess having the park and the Silverstone name obviously draws kind of talent into this kind of ecosphere. But what about the businesses that, is there any kind of sharing of talent, or is it, because surely if someone's got kind of transferable skills from one kind of advanced technology business, they can probably use it in another. Is that something that's encouraged? Is that something that's kind of proactively done? Or do people just want to hold on to their really good people and not really kind of have that kind of discussion?
This is probably a topic I could take up a whole podcast just talking about. It's and I'm starting to realise actually this is probably one of the biggest opportunities and issues for a lot of the occupiers. There's a massive skills gap in the UK for really good engineers, and especially in the local area, there's just not any universities that are set up to kind of feed into those kind of skills. So we work with a head partnership who are they're a schools program company. They help us join up with local schools, and we've started it in 2018 now. We've had 9,000 students come to site since that time. And that is a good opportunity to get them at that age, because there's a lot of focus on higher education, but actually when they're like 13, 14 and they're not quite sure what they want to do yet, that's actually a really good time to get them in front of real life businesses. Because I think a lot of the youngsters as well, they come in and they hear STEM and they're like, it's a bit dry, and they're not really sure. And then once they actually get to see real businesses like NICAP, they work really closely with us. It doesn't have to just be the glossy F1 teams, you know. So they come in and they get to see, they go to NICAP, they'll see how the cables are made, and they get really inspired, and they come out and they go, I really want to go into cable manufacturing. And there's just little elements of what's shown that just kind of creates a spark. We had a research piece afterwards, and we were asking the students, how many of you now would be interested in pursuing a STEM career? 71%. So it's obviously having that impact.
It's just having that exposure, right, to see where it can kind of lead and what the real life applications of it, I guess, to a certain extent. Because I think, when I've had these conversations with people around kind of STEM, and when you take into, put that in the Silverstone context, I guess F1 can take all the air out of the room to a certain extent, right? But it's not just that,
Yeah.
right? There are so many other applications of
Yes.
where these kind of businesses go. NICAB being one. We've had Nick on the podcast. But you also do a lot around you've got kind of schools programs and things like that anyway, right?
Yes,
so there's obviously you're trying to kind of build some of this into the future of the park already, right? So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's what's quite interesting as well is that you've got the engineer side of things, but you've also got the supporting services as well. And I think often we kind of look at just the engineering side, and not everyone wants to be an engineer. Not everyone's going to be an engineer. It's quite a niche skill set. But I think with a lot of the rural schools around here, they just don't know the opportunities. So we are doing those partnerships more to kind of either bring the kids to sites, or we get a panel of like 4 or 5 people from across the sector and we put them into schools so that they can ask the questions. We're looking at setting up a women in engineering and supporting sectors network at Silverstone Park as well, because we've got a lot of brilliant female engineers, but we've got a lot, as I say, a lot of people, not just like on the soft services side, but there's we're doing some building works at the moment. You might hear in the background for ambience. We've got a lot of women in supporting sectors that are critical in kind of getting those projects off the ground. So by having a network of people, it's just it goes back to that collaboration piece. You're far better off in a collective, able to say, well, actually, this is how we can get more young women into the sector. Because if we've got a skills gap, and we've got, I think, about 85% of the people in Park no, maybe not that high, about 60% are male. Yeah. So we've got a big area there to kind of grow the girls' side of things, interest in kind of working in this area.
Because that was going to be the next question around kind of diversity in advanced engineering and kind of advanced technology anyway, because traditionally it's seen as quite male dominated.
Yes. Yeah.
And obviously you've kind of got this program for women in this area as well. Yeah. What about the kind of other kind of underrepresented kind of minorities? It's kind of quite obvious when you I've been to some of the meetings, and it is quite obvious that it feels slightly underrepresented in places, and there's obviously work to do around that as well, right?
Oh, massively, and those two things are a real area that I'm really passionate about, because my children are mixed race, and they need to have those people that they can look up to. And I think if you can't see the role models, people that you can kind of align to, then it's very hard for you to kind of get into those positions yourself. And we did a campaign recently where we went around the businesses and we just actually really looked at the staff and we were like, right, we need to photograph some of these brilliant engineers who are from diverse backgrounds, who are women, or just anyone who's underrepresented. Because you're right, typically you go into the meeting room and it's all white middle-aged men, that is the industry, but we want to move that forward, and it's not sustainable to keep it like that. We do need to diversify, otherwise we're not going to be able to.
And I guess it's important that people from those kind of backgrounds see other people like them in those roles, right? And that's what's kind of important, that it's not just for pale, male and stale, right? It isn't just for kind of,
and it's not just a numbers exercise either, or a tick box exercise. And I think it comes down to culture and leadership as well, because you can, if you do a recruitment exercise where you're ticking boxes at the kind of like entry level, but then you haven't got anything reflective of that in leadership, it kind of says something to the people that are coming in, and I think it can become a bit of a barrier and a blocker. And I think we just do need to be aware and alive to the fact that, from people from diverse, different cultural backgrounds, or even different classes, they're going to bring different ideas that we haven't seen, and we really do need that, different ways of thinking about that. When you're looking at an innovative business, you need that 100%.
Yeah. And so this is actually quite an interesting time at the park, because I've seen a lot of this kind of Vision 2035 stuff online.
Yes.
I knew of it. I don't know all the ins and outs of it. But it feels like there is this kind of this 10-year plan for what's going to happen at the park and Silverstone in general. That would be great if you can kind of explain a little bit about what that is and what you're looking to achieve.
Yeah, I mean, it's all kind of lined up perfectly for us, to be honest, because the government announced the industrial strategy end of last year. One of the 8 key areas for them was advanced manufacturing, which is something that we cover off. So that's brilliant. They know that that's an area that needs to be developed if we want to grow the economy. And then Rachel Reeves recently talked about the Oxford-Cambridge Growth Corridor, which Silverstone falls into as well. And if they get that right, she's saying 78 billion is going to be added to the economy. So we are right in the heart of that. And we've been part of a visioning project that's organised by University of Northampton. That just started last week. It's kind of in its infancy at the moment, but it's the first of its kind for this area, where you've actually got a lot of the key stakeholders. So you've got Silverstone Circuit, ourselves, a lot of representatives from various councils and universities. And it's just getting everyone's heads in a room and pulling together all the research. So they worked with Whitecap Consultancy, and they went out and aggregated everyone's research and said, look, these are our, like a SWOT analysis basically, this is what we should be going after. And I think the idea is to have a final kind of cohesive document between everyone that they can then, you know, take to Parliament and say, actually, you know what, you really need to be investing in this area. We need to make sure we've got infrastructure in place. We need to have grants in place, etc. Because I think as a private business park, privately owned by investors, there's only so much we can do. We need that government backing to make sure that we've got transport, people can get here, that we've got the right pipeline of talent, etc. Yeah. So it's working together. So it's great for us to be part of those conversations, and I'm kind of glad that it's all aligning now. It's an exciting time to be here. Yeah.
It does sound like exciting times.
Yeah.
Chantal, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. As always, if anybody wants to know more about you or the park, or just get in contact, we'll include all of your details in the show notes. But for now, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.